Everybody, okay, I'm going to give a public sector overview. My name's Kim Curry and I'm Strategic Director for Adults and Communities, and I'm the Lead Strategic Director for the Council's relationship with the VCS. So what I'm going to talk about is really what's happened in the last year since our last event, and how we can start to use today to take things forward, given the very new context that we're working in, that the leaders just described to you. So just to really recap on what's happened in the past year, in strengthening our relationship with the VCS, we've continued to support the Compact and the principles that were signed up to in 2008. We've also taken an active role in the Compact Steering Group, which is the partnership between the VCS and the public sector that we co-manage with VAL. The cornerstone to developing our relationship with the VCS has been having a named council director to link with the sector, but also to have a nominated cabinet lead to work with the sector as well, and that's Councillor Darwood, as the leaders explained. We also support an infrastructure contract with VAL, and the purpose of this is to make sure that the sector has access to basic advice and support, and to make sure that we can get the engagement and delivery elements of that relationship right. We'll talk a bit more about that contract later. We also support 7 community of interest groups to make sure again that we've got some representation across the city, and we also provide a number of grants at the moment through the Leicester Partnership to groups to work with vulnerable people. So why is the VCS so important? I think, as Councillor Patel described, the VCS has always been a really important partner in terms of the work that goes on in the city, and will become even more critical as we go forward in times of austerity. But the way that really we see our relationship with the VCS is that we've got a dual role, not only as seeing the VCS as a provider, a potential provider of public services, and we certainly heard quite a lot about that yesterday from the coalition government, but also a much wider role in supporting our communities, supporting civic society, and giving a voice and an opportunity for participation to the different groups in our city. That's a fiver. Okay, and I think our strategic vision for working with the VCS has to support and acknowledge both of those roles, and sometimes the tension that those roles can bring. In the climate that we're going to have, which we know is about state contraction, fewer publicly provided statutory services, it's more than likely, that the sector will have a much greater role to play. The Localism Bill certainly underpins this and sets out a much wider role and some better structures for the relationship that local authorities need to have with the sector. One of the aims today, therefore, is to make sure that we all understand what that relationship looks like, and that we have an agreed view of how that's going to work, and what we need to do to make it work. Because it's all right having a structure, kind of written on a piece of paper, but there's some very practical issues that we need to tackle. So this is underpinned recently by a report from Deloitte that looked at a number of challenges for local authorities in working with the VCS, and one of those is definitely the need to change the mindset of local authority staff from one of direct control and provision to one of influence and support and partnership. And I think that's a really significant challenge that we're going to have in the future. Okay, just a bit more about the contracts that we have with Voluntary Action Leicestershire. VAL are commissioned by the City Council, the PCT and the police to be the main infrastructure organisation to support the VCS in the city. The contract is based on 2 standards: the National Association for Voluntary and Community Action core standards, much easily known as NAVCA, and also they look at the core functions for a volunteer centre as defined by Volunteering England. So those are the two streams. At the heart of that contract are really another 2 important elements. The first one's about development, support and liaison, which focuses on the relationship between VAL and the community groups that are there to be supported. So it's about assisting those local groups to function more effectively, to deliver quality services and make sure that we understand the needs of the sector and respond to them. So provision of training, for example, could come into that, and also making sure that we facilitate good communication and collaboration across all groups. The second core element is really around representation and strategic partnership work, and that focuses on the infrastructure organisation in supporting community groups to engage with, in our case the LSP, that wider partnership, and making sure that there's some real voice and influence for the sector within that structure. That means that there's a really key role in being able to facilitate a relationship with the wider sector that's productive, that's collaborative, and that really becomes a conduit, not the mouthpiece. So the role is facilitative and really to give voice, not to be voice. Okay, so what do we need to do moving forward? We're going to continue to support the Compact and its principles, and also to develop that Compact steering group to be the real focus for building and facilitating the different kind of relationship we're going to need between the public sector and the VCS. Julie Foster is obviously our compact chair, and we'll be talking to Julie about how we can start to do some of that, and I know that Julie will be very frank and forthright in her views about what needs to happen, and actually I think that's really good because we need some really honest conversations in difficult times. We need to continue to build on our consistency in commissioning. In the City Council we've developed a number of action plans and tools that respond to some of the concerns that have been put forward from the sector about how we commission, or in fact don't commission, perhaps, taking that on board. There's been an awful lot of work put into that, and what we need to do is make sure that we work really, really closely with you to develop not only commissioning principles that are clear and transparent, but also the decommissioning ones as well, because that, you know, there's another side of this coin, and that's going to be really important, particularly given the financial position we're all going to be in. So in terms of this event, taking forward the actions that we're all going to identify today, a new approach to supporting and working with the sector is really what we need to nail down. And by the end of today, we hope that we've got a set of actions. I won't say action plan, it's bandied about all the time, isn't it? But a set of actions, really clear, really concise, that set out what we as a public agency need to do, what the sector needs to do, and what Val needs to do in supporting that, and how we bring it together. So less about strategy, more about action. Okay, that's me done, but obviously look forward to some of the discussions that are going to go on across the tables, and I'm going to hand over now.